Hello, it's Scott Manley here with Elite Dangerous and the longest journey I have ever had to do in this game. As part of a community goal, I'm travelling all the way over to Jacques station. Now right away I'm going to say none of this stuff was recorded live because this was 11 hours of basically flying around. Probably more because I stopped in a couple of places to look at the crazy star systems like this one, which just has rings around everything. But I didn't really stop to look at many things because I was really concentrating on getting to the destination. I knew that when I did it well, I was able to get about 2,000 light years per hour out of this. And that would pretty much require refueling every half dozen stars or so, overheating the spacecraft, charging up the drive, waiting for the drive countdown, and then just watching time after time after time, system after system after system after system, probably almost 800 jumps based on the 22,000 light years and about 33 jumps for every 1,000 light years. In retrospect, I'm not sure I really should have done this, but hey, I got to explore lots of the universe and realize that most of the universe is made of giant balls of plasma, which get slapped in your face every time you come out of hyperspace. Yes, stars of all kinds, giant, big and globular, and just enough time to honk the horn on a solar system scan and then find out that you're in an empty solar system with only one star, fly through the corona and marvel at the 577 units of fuel per second that this class 5 fuel scoop would actually bring in. Of course, all the time I'm sitting there in a very transparent cockpit with the sun beaming up from below, making me very hot, no doubt, if I was able to look down there. I didn't actually look down there a whole lot because a lot of the time I was actually doing other things while this was happening. But once you complete your refuel, you start to burn towards the next target, and once you're out of range, you start charging the drive. Really not much changes. The plane of the galaxy is there, the stars are kind of jumping around from one place to another, but you do get to see these dark clouds. Those are my constant friends, distant nebula that would follow me for thousands and thousands of light years. Every now and then I would stop to take some pictures, just because, I don't know, I wanted to take some pictures. This wasn't any particularly interesting world, it's just a high metal world, but you can see the pair of nebula that I've been kind of approaching as I travel towards Jacques. The one on the left is the Eagle Nebula, which is in fact a real nebula. And I decided that since I was going in approximately the right direction, that I would in fact make a point of visiting the Eagle Nebula and get some photo opportunities there, because after all, it was a very, very long trip. The good news is that it's a very long trip, which I've compressed down from 11 hours of footage to, less than 20 minutes, so you get to see this nebula grow very quickly in size as I approach it. The Eagle Nebula is Messier object number 16. It's also known as the Star Queen. And it's basically a region where stars are being formed, and it's also where the famous pillars of creation come from. In the background you can see also NGC 6357. There are quite a few nebula on the trip out to Jacques, but most of the nebula field near Jacques is procedurally generated and not based on any real data, largely because you can't see that far into the galaxy. It's pretty dusty and cloudy. There we go, one of our final jumps towards the nebula. It looks deep black and foreboding, but of course that's just against the background of stars in the nucleus of the galaxy. As we move further away from the star, the colours actually start to come out, because of course Elite uses a high dynamic range lighting, and it will adjust the view based upon how much background light there is. Anyway, as promised, I stopped for a photo op, whereupon I realised that because it was a real nebula that has been very well studied, there was a cluster of stars near the centre for which we have astrometric data and therefore will appear in the Elite database. These look kind of weird because the procedural generation isn't filling in around them, so to get the good Photoshop, or photo op, sorry, I decide to take this angle and of course use the high resolution photo. You might have seen this one on my Twitter, or maybe not. Anyway, that's the asp with the gold skin. And from there, we're pretty much going to continue our journey on to Jacques. From here, we're so close to the Nebula that we can't actually see the disk of the galaxy unless we look to the side. That is just the Nebula being illuminated from internal. There's a few thousand stars in the Nebula, and it is basically a birthplace of new stars. If you look on the left there, you can see the stars from the real catalogue, and that banding is because there's a finite limit to the accuracy of the distance calculations, so they kind of end up banded. Anyway, it turns out that the best way to see a lot of these nebula is by the brown dwarfs, because of course the brown dwarfs have the least light, so you can just kind of fly past them, fire up the frameshift drive, and then the time it takes for the frameshift to warm up, you're already getting a pretty good look at the structure of the galaxy and the various other nebula that we're going to fly past on the way out to Jacques. At this point I had 14,000 light years to go, travelled about 8,000 or 4+ hours. Again, every now and then I would stop to take some pictures, such as this gas giant with water-based life with the background of the galaxy behind it. How pretty that is. I wonder if we will ever be able to communicate with them. Sometimes I would sneak a quick look at the system map, because water worlds are actually quite easy to see, and if you pick those up, they're quite lucrative to scan those things with an advanced discovery scanner, because you're going to get a decent payout for those when you get back. And hey, you also get the name on those planets as well. The vast majority of the planets I am not scanning at all. I'm just basically pinging them with the discovery scanner to find out where they are, and that's it. I just don't have the time. There it is, there's my first water world I discovered on this trip, or at least the first one I chose to record. So, more than halfway there by this point, and things were starting to get really, really tedious. I was always endeavouring to do stuff in the background. Like, I had some reading material going, and yeah, I would start to look at my random stats, because there's this really deep stats screen on the right side that tells me all sorts of numbers about my character and how much money I've made doing things. Boy, that's really interesting. But regardless of all my reading material, it was a lot of jumping, a lot of refueling, a lot of feeling the sun beneath my butt as I filled up the spacecraft. But I was getting a bit stir crazy, so I decided to land on a planet and stretch my legs. Then I realised that feature hasn't been implemented yet, and will probably come maybe in the next season of releases. So instead I land on the surface, look for a place to set down, so I can bring out the rover and have it stretch its legs. Or wheels, or thrusters, or whatever. Turns out, despite the fact that I was 12,000 light years from Earth, I was still able to find a short-range fighter. I believe this is a Condor Imperial fighter, somehow crashed on this desolate moon in a distant solar system. Perhaps it was brought there by a mothership. Now, I know that feature isn't currently in Elite, but it is going to come in the next release. The Elite Dangerous Horizons 2.2. They've just been announcing a bunch of features which are going to come into the game for the next release, which will be in October, and one will be the ability to carry fighters and launch fighters. You can either assign them to AI pilots, or you can jump in them yourself and let your main spacecraft fight for itself. Yeah, this is me just kind of taking a look around at the nebula as I'm flying away from this star. As I get further away, the nebula get more and more visible, and there's a whole lot of them out there. Again, by this point, these are all procedural nebula as far as I can tell. Anyway, beyond space fighters being added to the game, and of course some new space fighter designs, they're going to add passenger missions, which are mostly going to be, cargo, which you take from A to B and you need a special cargo bay. But there are also VIP passengers who will request things like flying by that space battle to get a look, and then please stop at the nearest station because we need a bunch of alcohol to keep this party going. By the time that I'd travelled about 15,000 light years, I'd started to stop a lot to take pretty pictures of my asp next to the stars. It's very nice the way the light reflects off that shiny hull. I keep on wondering whether I should spend some money buying some of these fancy skins, but I don't know, I'm not really a microtransaction kind of guy. Anyway, other features showed off at Gamescom was a whole bunch of new station interiors to differentiate the station designs. There's going to be dry docks for capital ships, and there'll be new station designs which are more or less pulled directly from the CQC levels. And there'll be a few new spacecraft. There's the Beluga is the large passenger liner, and I think there might be a smaller passenger liner they're introducing. The Orca is the current passenger liner in the game, and given that it's in the original Elite Dangerous, I'm presuming that the passenger missions will be something that is available to all users and not just Horizons users. But perhaps most interesting and cryptic, during an interview with David Braben, which was actually published a couple of days early, the unknown artifacts interfered with the stream and data was flashed on the screen. Now, of course, people that play Elite seem to be a bunch of nerds, to be honest. I mean, I play it. And they decoded it within a few hours. So the message they found said, "To find us, look for a bounty hunter. To find more clues, you'll need a pre-logistic support in a system with 1 star, 2 belts, 3 rings, and enough radiation to turn your green. The hunt begins on the 28th. And using those clues, people of course started looking at the galaxy map, and they did indeed find a system in the Pleiades sector with 3 rings, an outpost which has pre-logistics, and a green gas giant with ammonia-based life. So I'm pretty sure there will be a ton of people there on the 28th. Unless, of course, Frontier realizes its mistake early and decides to change things, because that would be entirely in their power to do so. Anyway, whatever they do, I'm sure the fans will figure it out very quickly because, as I said, we're all a bunch of nerds and we love this stuff. And meanwhile, while I was 15,000 light years from home, I thought, well, I'll get some nice pictures while I'm out here. So to get the camera angle I wanted, I kind of had to park on the edge of a crater and then move the rover to the right position so I could see the nebula overhead, the galactic core, and this shadow, I don't know, this cloud against the galactic plane. From another angle, you can see some more stuff there. It's very, very pretty game, to be honest. But no time to waste, I had to get going again. In fact, I had a very tight schedule on this because I was going to have to leave for vacation on a specific date. So on the Friday, I think, I basically did a live stream which was more or less like 3 hours of me playing Euro Truck Simulator in space, hyperspacing from one place to another, and just talking. Honestly, it was the worst and most boring live stream ever, but hey, I did end up getting towards the station in time. This is another one of those moments where I made a point to frame shift out towards the edge of the system so that the brightness or the glare of the star would fade and let me really see the nebula overhead. Look at the colours of that thing! But yeah, after that, it was that live stream, 3+ hours of non-stop warping, and this was the final moment as the drive is warming up, jumping towards that final star, the location where Jacques has ended up on his many long travels. The place where thousands of other players have travelled tens of thousands of light years to deliver it helpful materials and hardware, essential supplies as part of this community goal. You see now it says I am in a shipping lane, yep, and it tells me I'm at EOL Pru RST D3-94 system. And Jacques is there. It's 80DD-D774CE-2. Well, I preferred calling it Jacques. I think they changed the name to that just so that players wouldn't be able to search for Jacques Station. They could probably change it back by now. Just saying. Anyway, yeah, of course, I was quite happy to get this far, and I made a point of doing this in solo mode because, yes, there were players who had warped out here, and they basically set themselves up to shoot anyone near the station because, of course, that would be pretty funny or pretty trollish to shoot people as they come with their goods, come with their materials after a very, very long trip. I saw people doing this with drive ranges that are way less than mine, and they must have spent almost like 24 hours on this grand voyage. I just don't know where people find the time for it, but you know, Elite fans are just loving living in their spaceship world. I like the asp, by the way, for landing because you can kind of look down at the landing pad. It feels much more like you're landing a helicopter or something. Not that I have the ability to land a helicopter, but I imagine that's what it must feel like. And with that, I was so happy. I was finally able to relax for a bit. So that's the goal, and all I had to do was sell the structural regulators that I'd brought with me. I brought 36 tons. I'd already sold 1 ton just to verify that it would get credited correctly. I also brought 36 tons of power generators. And with that, I was able to get into the community goal. And in fact, I was credited with the top 10% at the time. But with 8,600 plus other contributors, it was only a matter of time before I was demoted to the top 25%. But hey, I wasn't going to make that trip more than once just to get into a higher band. Still, it worked out to be pretty profitable in the end. But it also put me in place to follow up with some subsequent goals. Right now there is a mining goal where you gotta collect minerals to help establish a new surface outpost. And then, of course, I've got the opportunity to make a quick visit to the core and maybe perhaps get back in time for that mysterious message on the 28th. Who knows? We'll find out. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.